Hello, I'm LinkingX2 and welcome to the review of the GenG and T1 series. As usual, we're going over the pick and ban phase and focus on what the teams want and achieve with their team combinations. So getting right into it with game number 1. In the ban phase, Renekton, Olaf and Echo. So Renekton and Olaf, two sinners that we don't really want to see banned or picked, but okay. Echo for BDD, quite the powerful pick. On the other side, Samira, Talia, Team F. Yeah, so Talia obviously banned on red side nearly every game. The other two, quite powerful, and yeah, you don't really want to have the TF roaming around in your usual game. So yeah, the bans are a bit more open nowadays, with some picks getting figured out more and more. The only real staple here usually is the Talia. So, leaving Pantheon open, 41 to pick up, and yeah, with the God Drinker build he scales a bit better than before, but yeah, still kinda shows a lot of your comp where it's going to go. But yeah, the powerful pick in the first rotation here, not only because of his damage, but also his easy point and click stun and his ultimate ability are what makes him so oppressive and so powerful in, well, many cases. On the other side, the Camille and the KeSpa being locked in for BDD and Rascal. Camille, for many the strongest top laner, can be bullied in the first around 10 minutes, but afterwards can become quite the dominant force who can snowball that throughout the map with her high mobility. KeSpa, similarly in many cases regarded as one of the, if not the strongest AD carry and ruler, already had quite the performances on her. Well, Camille somewhat indicates skirmishes, scaling and the potential split push that is still quite broad, and KeSpa also as an AD carry not showing too much in terms of that team comp. But GenG has some scaling and skirmishing now, so in terms of what the drafts and picks are indicating, so that T1 can answer this build that is being patented as their team comp quite early on. In this case, as I said, Camille and KeSpa are not showing too much. For T1 they get the Aphelios Thresh rotation, a very powerful bot lane at the moment, especially for T1, quite handily one of their best, if not the best bot lane at the moment. For the striker Gumayusi, yeah, he already had his fair share of highlights on the pick and carry as well. We saw that in the down one Kia Series 2, so this is quite the strong combo to secure here, and well, it works great into KeSpa. Also Camille, who wants to get into the fights, while yes, obviously she wants to isolate the AD carry here. Aphelios really likes it when people run into him, and yeah, the Camille is one of these champions that like to do that, certainly. And here with Pantheon, they have quite the strong mid game already, so far so good for T1. With this potential mid game power, they could punish the more scaling picks GenG already has elected for themselves. Lastly, for the first rotation, the Nidalee now without the moon stuff build that's being popularized by LS. Her scaling still isn't too well, and obviously she's intended as some sort of bridge champion for GenG. The AP-AD mix for the top lane, quite helpful, while there are, well, some problems here with this picks. The AP mid laners that we're probably going to see, and in the 1-on-1 versus the Pantheon, she's obviously losing. But with Talia being banned, Lilia, yeah, not really the bridge champion that you're looking for, and well, we're not seeing the Graves here, which is somewhat strange, but I guess okay, if you're looking for AP then you're going with Nidalee. So yeah, the Moonstuff build is not really what we saw in the LCK, so yeah, the scaling on this pick will be quite bad. In the next ban phase, set Galio, so yeah, the supports that could become problematic for T1, with Gumayusi being known to position quite aggressive most of the time, and yeah, remembering set is Live's pick, so to speak, these bans do make quite a lot of sense. On the other side, the cannon into the Camille is quite a matchup Korean top laners want to avoid, so we have seen this being banned quite frequently, while the Azir is, yeah, for Faker, his most played champion, has played it in the last 3 matches, and well, it could fit in here. quite a bit, while I don't really like the pick too much, as he is way too passive and overall not too proactive. So the ban kinda wasted, but it's understandable, and they're absolutely denying this from being picked up here. Picking up themselves though is the Syndra here, quite the popular and powerful pick. You all should know about her strengths quite well, as we have seen her for the last couple years, right? This works quite nice with what GenG has here in terms of skirmishing, and also in the face of the more immobile T1 champs that can be picked off here. Also she's relevant, but as she's so relevant in the meta, people have had their time and solutions to the pick. So we should find out something here against her, which in this case is the Zoe, with the Gragas being picked in T1's last rotation. The Zoe has worked quite good in the past, and that has mostly not changed. The range advantage is just very handy here. We see more mid-game power accumulated by T1 here with this pick, and also more long range. So they are building quite the oppressive game state here. Especially considering T1 has this strong long range in the mid game, while GenG is quite short ranged and they are looking to scale. The gap here is quite large. Then the Gragas, well, he could swap with the Pantheon in the jungle and top lane position, so there's a little flexibility here, but not really. Additionally, Gragas quite famous for his disengage, which is quite great for T1 here. He has the tank or the AP option in his build path, for which both have arguments. For AP, it's even more poke and burst for their comp, similarly to the Zoe with high AP. On the other side, the tank option, well, it's at least somewhat something of a frontline for T1 to better block off the incoming engages. Lastly, the Rel pick for life. It offers some support for the engages, and it can amplify a lane matchup in some scenarios. In this case though, she isn't doing too much, as the engages do not really need help in the usual sense, because if an engage does happen, GenG should win always. That's how soft of a team T1 has drafted for themselves, but to get this engage, well, that's GenG's issue here, and Rel really can't help too much with that. Also in the lane phase, she's not looking too great here into the Aphelios, especially with Thresh by his side. So overall for T1, we see a very strong mid game, 1 and 2 item spikes with long range, and some safety tools as well. Quite nice. They do lack engage to force their lead onto GenG in certain situations, but that should not be too much of an issue with their skill shots. Well, if their skill shots should land. Scaling wise, they are behind by a bit with their comp, and that could hurt them quite a bit, especially if the Camille is getting too strong, as she can be a catalyst to break their comp with the great danger a Baron buff should provide. On the other side, GenG, against the long range poke, they have some options to pick them up should one wander off by themselves, but in standoffs or sieges they have no reliable means to brush them off or get to them should they get ahead though. Even though their engage is not too impressive with the little brush checkers on T1 side, the vision lead could snowball heavily in GenG's favor, which then makes T1's champ way weaker than they already would be. So we have some sort of knife fight here. The one who wounded first is likely to lose due to little comeback mechanics. That said, GenG would have the very small chance to punish an overextended T1 due to flanking potential. T1 here won the draft and the game. The draft, it was more so-so. GenG had very few more options. But as I said, the one to first punch ahead is very likely to stay there, and T1 was able to keep the distance and only move in to kill their targets, not move in to fight, and on the back of Gumayusi, T1 literally strikes first. Coming to game number 2, we see the side switch obviously, and in the ban phase TF Samira Aphelios. So GenG is now banning the Aphelios here on the blue side away from Gumayusi, as we have seen quite often now. On the other side, Kai'Sa, Set and Taliyah, T1 changing the bans, adding the Taliyah and banning the better bot lane champions for GenG. First pick for GenG is Kalista though. Ruler may not be too known for her, but his Kalista is quite good, having having a good win rate and a decent KDA here. Yeah, and in the meta at the moment she can enable the tank engaged supports quite good, especially Life, who really likes his quite crazy picks in that position. Also the now early itemization can be quite powerful for her, making her quite the more powerful threat in the mid game than we saw last year, for example. 41, the Jhin Pantheon rotation. Jhin quite decent into the Kalista due to the rage advantage. Her mobility will get her away from his CC though, so yeah, it's more okay and mostly depends on the supports paired up with them for the laning phase here. Pantheon support, well, it could be an option here, but expected is that he is 4 LM again in the jungle. T1 have broad options in their team identity here, with the Pantheon being able to flex in positions and also obviously is quite the capable bridge for any mid or even late game comps, and the Jhin as well can be quite good in the mid game as he is offering some CC and setup for other champions, but also then later on, while his DPS is not that high as the usual AD carry, his damage is off the charts with 6 items. GenG here picking Olaf Renekton, the 2 greatest sinners in League of Legends. GenG going full Rombo into the mid game here, full storming into T1. And that's a big issue here. Firstly for Jhin, he is quite in some danger now, but also for GenG, this is quite balls to the wall. We go all in, and we show this now in the draft. T1 has still 3 options to answer this, and well, also some twerks here in the ban phase. And such an aggressive, such an extremely red setup here from GenG. It's either fighting fire with fire for T1 or getting safe lanes so that GenG can snowball, or the later and more common option to stall and set up with a ranged wave clear for more late game scaling. So T1 has quite some options here now, and with seeing everything GenG has to offer for this draft, T1 can only win from this point onward. Their first step towards a draft win would be the Azir. Again, it's quite the resident sleeper pick, as you would say. He is safe in nearly all matchups and can work quite nicely against the Crocodile and the Kalista. His scaling obviously from ranged as well, quite potent, as is his wave clear. Again though, the pick alone is nearly a total surrender for T1's mid game, as normally the mid laners are some sort of power points in that state. Azir though can mostly offer only his ultimate as some sort of interruption at this moment, or maybe chunk some squishier targets that do end up being CC'd by his teammates. On a small note though, why he is picked blindly here and quite early in the draft. Remember game number 1, GenG banned him in the second ban phase, so maybe Faker or T1 here thought that they had to pick him up if they were thinking about it. So probably that's the reason why we see him quite early, one has to say. One would imagine that you might want to hide your mid laner for quite a longer period of time. Speaking of the second ban phase, Ornn and Thresh, so GenG banning the safe options that T1 could elect, especially the Thresh for the Jhin works quite nicely, similar to the Aphelios Thresh combination, and the Ornn in the top lane. Well, he is just very, very awesome in this setup here. Not only is he neutralizing the Olaf Renekton top lane aggression, he's setting up his team with even more scaling, has great teamfight abilities, as we all know, especially against these more bruiser champions. The slow of the ultimate in the first iteration is quite potent, and then obviously the knockback, but even the first phase of his ultimate is quite potent here. And additionally the option of a more mid and bot lane focus if you have an Ornn in the top lane is also there. So banning the Ornn quite smart from GenG. On the other side, Zoe and Echo, well, they are considered to be quite decent in the Azir, especially BDD's Echo, that has been banned here now for the second time. If one just didn't elect their mid laner too early, one might have had a bit more freedom with these bans, but to be honest, it's still okay, it's not a huge issue. But I'm not too sure about the Zoe. Yes, it's good into the Azir, but I think the more common Syndra would have been better, just to get this more common pick out of the way. It's always good to get people off their comfort picks, even if the other option is on similar power level. just getting them off what they're used to is very helpful. Then the Gragas here being elected first. The Gragas again for Kana. This time he should go for the tank version, and yeah, that's making way more sense against the Renekton. It's totally fine in the laning 1v1. Yes, he's not winning the extended trades with the Conqueror coming up, but yeah, in the short trades he's completely fine. His wave clear is also okay. Yes, he can't really defend against Olaf and Renekton if they want to take his tower, especially with the Herald obviously. But yeah, he's not getting perma-killed unless he's really messing it up. He's also offering more initiation for T1 to later on reclaim the map after they have given it up in the mid game as well. As Gragas is obviously in line with Azir in more surrendering the mid game here, and then later starting a comeback in the 27th, with the early game lead, probably more 30th minute, 41 to come back into the game with better item spikes on their carries. The Syndra Jarvan rotation then for GenG. Well, Syndra is no surprise. Overall, the mid laner of choice for the last years, and it continues to be so. With the Olaf also the nice damage share, and for the overall setup of GenG's comp, she spikes with 1.5 items quite nicely. All the AD in their comp is also helping her burst damage quite a lot. So overall not surprising pick, and not surprisingly it's also quite good here. The Jarvan being elected here as well. Well, that's quite strange because it's not Spirit, but it's still Jarvan's support. It will probably play out quite similar to what we saw with Spirit, the Zhonya's rush back then. But it could also be quite good with the Moonstaff or Moonstone trend that I already mentioned before. The bullying and poke in lane, as well as then later on more steroids and the buffs in terms of movement speed and heals. Could work quite nicely here from the Jarvan in the support position, as well as the surprise factor overall. 41 lastly, we see the Alistar. He can peel somewhat against the Sinners charging in at Jhin, but it's quite hard to protect Jhin from both of them, while Jarvan is also coming into the fights. Thresh was banned though, so Alistar at least can help somewhat to prevent the dives, especially in the earlier stages. His frontlining next to Gragas also for the later stages is quite great. Question is now, how is T1 getting there? Overall, the team comps here, GenG that will get the lead early on. With their initiate power due to their champions, they can push quite far ahead in gold, while it could be a bit tough to get some turrets, especially the mid lane one. Nowadays, with the 2 heralds, that is no option, that is no issue. They can also, not really fall behind. Their champs are just really damn powerful on the 1 or 2 item spikes. Actually, even before that, T1 has also nothing really that they could ride the snowball on. It's not the Azir, not the Gragas, and also not the Jhin. There's a potential for the Pantheon, but the jungle Pantheon with lower level and eco than, for example, the top lane version. It's not as snowbally, especially here with his lethality also being a bit less efficient against the bruiser-like champions that GenG elected. So T1, especially in face of what GenG has, really looks a bit off, and against what T1 have later on, a good front line, mostly one good DPS champion. Jhin is a bit more on the decent level instead of being good. Then a Pantheon who is trying to bridge here, but is probably mostly on lane cover duty, so trying to protect his lanes. They have some options to engage the comeback fights, but in the more fast-paced meta, there is very little way to guarantee that you win these fights, because Gordrinker has increased the scaling of Olaf and Renekton, and it could force the healing tax in form of executioners and Morellonomicons onto them, and then consider also the potential Jarvan could have with his auras, especially with the Moonstaff build. GenG, they showed quite early what they were going to do, and sadly for T1, they failed to adapt. Yes, they did pick for scaling in accordance to that, but what use is that scaling if you're dead? And the idea they had with surrendering the early game, I don't know, it's quite foolish in my opinion. Maybe they had some other plans that didn't work out, but no. You can't surrender the early game like that. There's just too much gold there now loaded, especially with like turret plates and the heralds. It's just not as easy to turtle in for half an hour and then initiate fights on your terms. So GenG is coming back, tying the series 1-1. In the last game, T1 moves back to the blue side obviously. And in the ban phase, we see, similar bans to the first game, Renekton on Olaf and the Echo, which is very strange to see. The, potential panic bans on Renekton on Olaf, not too sure. It's just very sad to see these two champions being banned, as there are answers in champions, in play styles, and even in comps in general against them. So it's just a bit of wasted potential here to ban these two champions, which weren't even really the problem in the second game. On the other side, Samira, Talia, TF, not changing too much here. Talia now on the red side, as the tradition dictates it, so there's no space for the Aphelios ban. Maybe they didn't fear it as much as they fear a Samira or a TF, or maybe they even have figured something out and prepared something in the meantime. Either way, Aphelios is now being left open from GenG. But T1 is not first picking it, they're first picking the Pantheon again, so they're not changing the jungler, while the individual player here, Elim, was not really playing bad. He actually had quite little impact pre-level 6, so maybe getting him onto something different might have brought fresh winds into the squad, but they didn't took that option. Camille and Nidalee then for GenG. Again, the early priority on the Camille pick. In GenG's first game, that didn't work out too nicely for them, but still Camille was their strong point there, and their shining grace ever so often. And the Nidalee, similar story. I repeat myself here, Nidalee with the moon stuff, quite capable, but without it, a bit more lackluster, as we saw in game number 1, especially into the Pantheon, picking it into him. It's a very tough matchup. Yes, she's farming faster, but even with the CS leads, the Pantheon will still kill her in the 1v1. And his ganks are also stronger, his ultimate is way more useful. Well, obviously Pantheon is quite the potent jungler. Nidalee is just lacking in many departments in comparison. Then for T1, the predicted Aphelios Thresh rotation. With their strong suit here, putting the last game in the series into Gumayusi's quite capable hands, and with Carrier having his back, it's a bit sad not much attention is given to him, but Carrier also had his quiet moments of greatness this year so far, so looking forward to see the bot lane synergy of T1. For Ruler on the other side, we see the Kalista. He rolls it back to the pick from the second game against a stronger T1 bot lane this time. And with the ban phase coming out, Live probably has to look for something new into the Aphelios. Personally, the Kalista is doing fine. She can have some issues if he then later in laning phase gets to more particular gun setups, but in the first few levels, it's looking good for her. But again, the Thresh can be quite the good protection for the Aphelios, while Kalista's support is still left open here. In the already mentioned second ban phase, we see Echo Gragas. So BDD's Echo banned a third time. I kinda understand it, but even though I would guess there could be something you could do, but even though I would guess there are some options if you look for the answers, Echo is quite the nuisance, so maybe you don't want to tempt fate in this case. The Gragas, well, Aphelios, even with the Thresh, is kinda in danger of his cask. Rascal wasn't really playing him, but Kana again, in the last two games, so maybe GenG wasn't even considering it, but taking no risks here and getting rid of the fat man in the top lane. Some have called for the Jarvan ban here, and yeah, certainly he could have been banned here. It's easy to flame in this position. The Gragas could have been very problematic, even if you consider the following picks. So yeah, Jarvan is just the more unknown pick here for life. So yeah, his power in the game could have been misevaluated by T1 at some stages. So I can understand that you would ban him more so to just get rid of this unknown factor, but yeah, especially if T1 has had the next two champions already in mind, the Gragas ban just makes quite a lot of sense. On the other side, Ken Akali, not too surprising, some top laners that are considered quite great into the Camille, as yeah, we have seen these bans quite often in the past. This is nothing too surprising. In the next rotation, obviously, we see the Syndra for BDD, who has probably watched some Showmaker games. Third game of Syndra here. Now, yeah, she was really a massive force in this series, but still, that something like this could happen so regularly for BDD to get this pick, especially T1 has not done anything against it. So yeah, she complements the early power of GenG here as well, and as usual offering quite a lot of things for her team. 41 a Zoe Jace rotation. So yeah, getting into some of the discussions online. Many had issues with the Zoe pick here. I have to say the pick is complementing the poke of T1's comp so far, but yeah, doing nothing more, which is not too bad on its own. One might wish for more from her. Also, the matchup into the Syndra is not as clean cut as it was in game 1, which was mostly due to Faker's performance here. Additionally, she and the Jace can work quite nicely together, as they both set up for long range elimination. And yeah, that's it though. If T1 is able to set up the team as one, then the long range spell of all their members are quite oppressive. AD and AP projectiles that do about 70% of HP. That's quite hard to itemize again, but the discussion is not finished for now here. Lastly, on the other side, for GenG, the Jarvan. So another round of Jarvan support. Now against the Thresh, it should work quite a bit worse than before. Still in lane, quite fine again. Later on though, yeah, T1 is quite susceptible to engages and SR. Wow, it will lock up the immobile carries quite a bit, and with that, as there's only one lantern to salvation for the three main carries for T1. Speaking of T1, with heavy long range missiles in the AP and AD department, with the last rotation of Jace and Zoe, they built themselves a very strong poke setup here, but still, was it really needed to double down on that idea so much? And yeah, I would disagree mostly with this. The Jace, for example, can work. It's not too terrible in itself, but there could have been something better in the regards to the team win conditions. The pure poke style is not only quite hard to play, it's also very vulnerable. If it's working though, it feels OP, but in this case though, support for the Aphelios in form of a tank or peel, maybe just some shields and heals with the Moonstar users. Other than that, if you want to focus on the top lane as they did with the continuous ganks towards the Jace, something that could do more in the game than this Jace. For example, the Jax, who's also doing quite fine into the Camille, has been regarded as a counter pick for quite a while now. And yeah, as the mid lane pool, it's quite large at the moment, so I could recommend quite something in any situation T1 would go for against the Syndra, Yone, or Faker's own Echo. If they're not banning it, are the options. Even if they're going for the Gumayusi focus, or maybe this could also work in a more Kana focus setup. Galio and Faker are no strangers. Galio obviously fine into Syndra, so there are other options here for T1 to round up their draft with a different pairing. GenG, they're mostly the winner here. T1 has poke, which can be oppressive as I said, but the options from flat out engage into them with the Kalista Jarvan or some Camille flanks, maybe even Syndra pick, or even the quite reliable and most certainly powerful split push into the GG can lead GenG to their victory, as Jace can't really answer Camille later on, and T1 can't engage themselves, and with no front line they can't also reconquer the vision if they ever would lose it. So a split pushing Camille with GenG baiting Baron, it's just over. There's little T1 can do. Yes, taking the Baron against T1 doesn't really work, as it would for them be like shooting fish in a barrel. But if they were to take it in the end, it's even a harder GG for GenG. So T1 really is walking a tightrope here, and yeah, GenG is the wind that is most certainly blowing quite hard here against T1. In the end, GenG is able to secure the win, not only using Camille nicely as a separate threat to spread thin and make it more difficult for the poke of T1 to be effective, stretching T1 thin in the process as well, so diminishing their poke ability by an extra bit as well, but also T1 misplaying their comp and opting for fights without the proper poke setup results in the 1-2 victory for GenG. Short, serious conclusion here, T1 locating power picks for LM and the bot lane, but overall not playing around their comp or the players which are popping off in this series. In Draft 1, well, it was quite okay, but also had its risk, which could have turned the game onto its head. In game number 2, it was, either you could call it arrogant, that they would hold out against a team like GenG, or they simply miscalculated the power of the enemy comp in the crucial moments of the game and set up in a wrong way to that based upon these wrong presuppositions. Lastly, game 3, they had many options to salvage the incoming situation. Starting with the first bans, it looked kinda shaky and they got into quite a difficult situation which they weren't able to handle appropriately. In the gameplay though, zoomed in, the level T1 showed was quite good. Great farm numbers for Faker and Gumayusi. Overall, the bot lane synergy with Carrier looked quite crisp. LM and Kana also working together promisingly. The jungle mid duo though, it's not too important at the moment, but that's something that I found quite lacking, especially in game number 3. The team fights are often very close, even though they should be more in GenG's favor if you consider the champions. So T1 has the mechanics set up, but they need to work a bit more on the off-rift setup in the bans, and probably something along the lines of win conditions. Thanks for watching till the end. This will conclude the review for the T1 and GenG series. Hope you had fun and a good time here with me. I know it was quite long, but there was lots to talk about. I felt like in the playlist or in the description below you can find the previous draft review which went over the DK versus T1 series. Anyway, just a question for today. What do you think about the Zoe and Jace pick at the end? Again, I think it could have been okay, but overall I agree with the sentiment that there were better options out there, and not only in the laning matchup but also for the team comp overall. But that's it now for me though. Please stay safe, have a great day, till next time, bye.